Okay, all right, I have to figure out how to do this. Sorry, folks. Okay, I'm not going to share, well, all right, we'll put this up. Okay, I'm sorry, do you people, can you see a picture with a woman and two children now?
No, we see we see a Shabbos table, and it's a Word document.
Oh, okay, well, we don't want that, and I'm sorry, let me just see if I can get out of that. Oh, okay, I know what I have to do. Oh, I should close almost everything else up. I'm sorry, folks. Is anything shared now? No? Okay, now what do you see, please?
We see a woman and her two children.
Okay, and that's all you see. Okay, I'm I'm really trying. Oh, I'm sorry. I was supposed to have closed up all my windows and I didn't do that, and I apologize, folks. Let me get out of them. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see all of you. I see a lot of friends. I see a lot of people who probably know this story already. I think a number of you have been with me on my trips to Poland. I've been on a remarkable journey over the last 20 or 25 years, and one that I never expected to find earlier in my life. It's meant a lot to me, and there are things that I want to pass on to some of my, to the next generation, some of whom you can see here, or at least there's Lexi, my granddaughter. And I want to tell you about the journey, and if you haven't done it yourself, I want to encourage you to do it. First of all, thank you to Doron for setting this up. Doron is the program manager at Ansche Chesed. And thank you to my granddaughter Lexi for the Zoom help that she gave me yesterday. I'm not a master yet, but maybe she'll help today too. I think that if we have any questions, we can put it in the chat, but we're such a small group. I think it's going to work out okay. At the end of the presentation, I'll unmute everybody and we're going to be okay. Growing up, I heard lots of stories from, my mother was born in Poland in a small town called Ilza. It's spelled I-L-Z-A. The L is the broken Polish L and the Z is the dotted Polish Z. So it's actually pronounced Ilza. But we anglicize it and just say Ilza. She was born there in 1918 and came to the United States in 1927. She had one younger sister, her sister Lee, who was 2 years younger than her. And my grandfather left Ilza in 1920, actually when my grandmother was still pregnant with my Aunt Lee. He went to Argentina and he planned to bring the family there because he had sisters and brothers there. But he didn't like it. It wasn't Jewish enough for him. So he came to New York, where my grandmother had a brother. It was during the years when the United States was imposed. It was getting difficult to bring, to just emigrate directly to the US. And it wasn't until 1924 when some of the immigration laws were changed that he was able to start the process. And it took him a couple of years to bring them over. They came in 1927. My mother was 9 and her sister was 7. All my life, my mother told us stories about her life in Ilza. They lived in a big house right on the town square. She didn't miss her father because she had so many aunts and uncles and cousins. She said she had 35 first cousins and had a very happy life there. She talked about what a lovely little town it was. She talked about the castle on the hill, the ruins of the castle on the hill where she played as a child. or at least they played on Shabbos. The Catholic kids in the town played on Sunday. And she had very fond memories of her life there. Once asked her if she missed not having her father, she says, well, that's the way it always was. Plus, my grandfather took such, I was his favorite. I became his favorite grandchild. So it wasn't a problem for me, but I was very happy to reunite with him when I was 9. So Ilza was just a storybook to me. It was very much in black and white, because that's, if it was 1927 and there were any pictures, they were all in black and white. And then my friend Roberta Temis, who's on the call, her mother, Eleanor Rampel, was an inspiration for me. When Robbie's first child got married, Robbie's mother, Eleanor, gave him a present and created a big, beautiful family album. She did it, there was no typing, there was no computers, there was no Xeroxing. She copied photos, she had them copied and pasted in a beautiful album that told the story of their family and their family history, including a lot of stories about their life in the old country, which at least part of it was Poland too. And for about 15 or 20 years, or maybe 10 or 15 years, every time I made a master to-do list, it said, family history project was one of the things I thought I would do. Took me a long time to do anything. In 1999, I went to Israel, and I thought I would find stuff there. But I didn't know where to go, and I didn't know what I was looking for, so I didn't find anything. I came home, and I found a website called jewishgen.org, which is still a wonderful go-to site. I see heads nodding. And Jewish Gen had a family finder where you could input the name of your town and the family you're looking for. And I did that, and I got 2 letters the next day, and they were from, it turns out, relatives of mine on my mother's Feldman side of the family from Ilza. One of them was in Israel, and the other was David Feldman up in Canada. Davy was somebody who I knew well. We had visited them in Canada. He's, I think, a second cousin once removed of my mother's, but they're mishpucha, and we came from the same town. So that made us close. I spoke to Davy, and it turned out that his daughter was living across the street from me on West End Avenue in New York. Who knew? I met his daughter Ruth, and it seemed that Ruthie had actually gone and visited Ilza. Now, the idea of visiting this town was completely, it never even entered my mind. My mother left, and it was a closed door. Through the post-war generation and into the 50s, it was a communist, well, way much longer, it was a communist country, and it wasn't on anybody's travel list. So the idea just wasn't there. But suddenly I look at Ruthie's pictures, and the town emerged in color. It was real. It was a real place. There was a picture of the mill that my mother used to describe on the river. So the idea of going there was born. On my 60th birthday, my daughters Angie and Susan got the idea of doing something to celebrate my birthday. And I think the initial idea was a weekend in Las Vegas. And then that somehow got expanded to, well, let's go to Europe and see mom's hometown, grandma's hometown. And the next thing I know, we were planning a trip to Eastern Europe, and the 3 of us did go. We celebrated Rosh Hashanah in Connecticut. The first part of our trip was in Prague, where we went to Beit Praha. We went to a synagogue and celebrated Yom Kippur. And then by the next holiday, we were in Warsaw, Poland. First we went to Krakow, and visited this lovely old city. And then we took, we took a train from Prague to Krakow. And then we had arranged for a guide. I had in the interim become involved in a little bit of Jewish genealogy. And actually a few weeks before we went on our trip, I went up to Toronto for a Jewish genealogy conference. And I had at that point contacted my cousin Phyllis, who's on the call. We had not been in touch for about 35 years. I think Phyllis is my second cousin twice removed or something like that, but we're cousins and we grew up together in the Bronx. And I spoke to Phyllis, and when I told her about my interest in going to Toronto, that's where her mother lived a good deal of her life, or a good part of her life. And she says, I'll go with you. So Phyllis was my roommate at the conference. And we connected with a lot of our Feldman relatives in Toronto. One of the things that happened at the conference, and I think Carolyn Veffer, if you're here, was also at that meeting. There was a meeting of about a dozen people who had roots in Ilza. One of the women at the meeting had been there and had photos. And I grabbed I grabbed all her photos and I ran to a copy store and made pictures of them. And the next weekend, just before we left for our trip, I showed them to my mother. And some of the pictures were photos of the town square. And she looked and she looked and she said, that's my house. It's the one next to the house that has the arches. So at least we knew what to look for when we would go to Ilza. Our guide picked us up in Krakow, and it was about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive to Ilza. The land around Ilza, that part of Poland, is very, very flat. And it was probably 10 or 15 minutes before we actually hit the town that we could see the castle on the hill that overlooks the town and is the focus of almost everything that happens in the town. The castle was built originally in 1239 by 3 bishops from Krakow. It was destroyed at some point. There were wars with the Swedes. It was rebuilt. It was destroyed again. And even in my mother's time, it was only ruins. But we saw it, and it was an extremely exciting thing. The guide that we had was absolutely wonderful. He's been my guide on every one of my trips to Poland. Before we even got out of the car, as we entered the town, he saw an elderly lady. He stopped the car, introduced himself, spoke to her in Polish, told her that we were visitors and that we were looking for our Feldman family. Did she know of anybody named Feldman? And she shook her head and said no. But the next thing I know, he had her in the car and she was taking us to where the site of the synagogue used to be. So we got a little taste of the town. We then walked over to the town square to look for my mom's house. Now, part of my mother's story, as I said, she was 9 years old when she left, and she told me that they lived in a house that had 2 big windows that opened up on the town square. My grandfather was a watchmaker, and when he was there, he used to have clocks hanging in the window. By her time, he was gone, but my mother has had all her life the most unbelievable green thumb. And she said that at the age of 9, she had over 100 plants hanging in the window. There isn't a plant that would dare die in Ida Strickman's hands. And she told us that when she left, she was so sad and she was crying about the plants, but that her aunt who took over the house had promised to take care of them. Well, when we got to the town square, the houses had been, by this time, converted into stores. And let's see if I can find this. I'm sorry. Okay, can you see that? No. Oh, I have to share. Sorry, folks. New share. There. Now, can you see a street? Okay. Well, there was my mother's house. It's a Quartiania, which is a flower shop. And in the window was full of flowers. We only spent 2 days in, no, we only spent 1 day in the town. We ate in a little cafe. Chris, who was a wonderful, as I said, is a marvelous guide and knows how to make friends with anybody, found some gentleman who was also in the shop, brought him over to our table. His name was also Chris. And the next thing you know, Chris was telling us about the history of the Jews in the town. This town was half Jewish for a good deal of its existence. And I think they lived very well together. Other than the normal Eastern European conflicts between Jews and non-Jews. But for the most part, the Jews were accepted and they were a major part of the town. The next thing you know, Chris was taking us through a field, and up to where the Jewish cemetery used to exist. The cemetery was completely destroyed. There was one fragment of a gravestone. One thing that I found interesting was that Chris from Ilza called it a matzeva. I have no idea how he knew that that was the Hebrew word, but he knew that much about Jews. So we saw this big forest, really, up a hill that is the place where my ancestors were buried. By the way, before the trip, I had started to do some research in Jewish records. And I have been able to trace my mother's Feldman family back to the town, to a Yankel and Rivka. They didn't even have surnames, who were born probably at the end of the 18th century. I think they're my 4th great grandparents. And my mother remembers when her great-grandmother, her grandmother died, no, her great-grandmother, and she remembers the funeral and she remembers that she was buried there. So it was very meaningful for us to see this cemetery. The girls and I spent only 1 day in the town. I came back, we went back to Warsaw, they left for Budapest. I came back a couple of days later, and our guide, Chris, had been in touch with people at the local records office. And when I got there, the woman had gone through records and found a number of my family's birth, marriage, and death records. And she was very happy to be able to help us with that. On this second trip back to Ilza, Chris and I stopped at the archives in Radom, which is a large city nearby. And they hold the regional archives, and they held the older records. And we went through record books, and I found the birth record of my grandmother, Bela Rivka, who I'm named for. I thought I had a copy. No, maybe I didn't. I thought I had a copy of the record here. It was the most exciting thing. It was the original copy of the record. It was in Russian. My Russian is not that good, but I was able to make my way through it and find it. And that was very exciting to see this physical sense of her, her presence. So that was our trip. We only spent a couple of days. I came back to the US. I got in touch with one genealogist who was also from Ilza, a Jewish genealogist who had visited and was very interested. Now let me depart for a second. A lot of the Jewish residents of Ilza who left before the war left in the 1920s, and they went to Canada, Toronto specifically. Phyllis is nodding her head. And the name of the town is Ilza, but the Jews called it Drilj. We still don't know where this name came from. The best guess we have is that the name of the small river that runs through the town is the Ilzhanka River. So if you were going to describe it, you would call it Der Ilza, and perhaps that's where it came from. But Jews who came from this town called themselves Drilgers, and when they settled in Toronto, they formed a Drilger society, which is active to this day. There was, as I said, there was another Jewish genealogist named Betty Starkman from Detroit. She and I took a trip up to Ilza, up to Toronto, and we went to a meeting of the Drilger Society and talked to them about the possibility of restoring the Jewish cemetery in Ilza. By this time, I had heard that Jewish organizations, that Jewish descendants were doing this in small towns all over Poland. And I was in touch with an organization that was doing it. I presented the idea to the Drilger Society. They adopted it. They appointed a chairman, and they pretty much took over that project. It took us, this was in 2002, and it took us 4 years. We raised money. The Ilza Society, we raised about $60,000 altogether. Some of it were private contributions. I did the out of Canada fundraising, which brought in some money. There was money from individuals in Canada, and then the society also contributed. And the town cooperated. The town cleared the land in the cemetery. We had a stone wall built around the cemetery. It's about 2.5 acres, and it goes up a hill, and it's heavily wooded. We had a monument built. We had a gate put around it, and a memorial plaque on the gate. And in 2006, we organized a trip to rededicate the cemetery. In the interim, by the way, and this was based on a model that some other town had done. I was in touch with the local high school in Ilza, where the students there knew nothing about, all they knew is that there used to be Jews who lived in this town, and they were very curious to know what happened. I guess that there wasn't an awful lot of talk about what happened during the Holocaust. But I organized we called it a contest for them to do research and to learn about their Jewish neighbors. And in the first year, the school itself organized the contest and awarded prizes. And teams of students did these 14, 15-page research papers about the history of Jews in the town. And there really wasn't very much that you could, there weren't very good sources, but they did whatever they could. I did that contest 3 years in a row. And by 2006, they were writing stories and poems about Jewish life. And we arranged that the cemetery rededication would also be an award ceremony for the students those years who won the contest. So we had about 200 people from the town show up for our cemetery rededication. The trip, there were 19 of us who went on the trip. Israel Bleiberg, who I think had to leave the group, came from Brazil. My cousin Phil, who may be on the call, was there. Carolyn Veffer was one of the people who came from Toronto. My daughter Susan and her then boyfriend, now husband, Jesse, were on the trip. And we traveled around Poland, and we spent a few days near Ilza and had this ceremony. And we were very, very well received. I do want to say that my mother's stories meant so much to everybody in the family. When I spoke to her after the first trip on the phone, the first time I spoke to her and told her about the trip, she said, you know, I'm sorry I couldn't go. I was just, you know, I just can't make it. I think she was in her late 70s by then. But I'm glad that you and Andrea and Susan went. Thank you for giving me back my childhood, which was a very wonderful feeling to be able to do that. The two trips were very inspirational, and I had hoped, because we had good reception in Ilza, I had hoped that we would be able to do something to do more to restore the sense of Jewish memory in the town. But I think that nobody else was interested at the time. So time dragged on. I wasn't getting help. My life went on. My mother died. My father died. I retired. My daughters got married. I had a grandchild, and my focus was elsewhere. Then around 2015, I was working with the author A.J. Jacobs on a book that he was writing called It's All Relative, and he was trying to put together a global family reunion. And I helped him in his first research into at least the Jewish part of genealogy. And we were going to go on a trip to his, he was going to have me take him on a trip to his 3 shtetls, or his ancestral homes in Poland. And we had the trip arranged. It was only going to be a 4 or 5 day trip. I extended my part of the trip to include another visit to Ilza. At the last minute, he had to cancel, but he said, you go anyway. And I did. I went to his towns, and then I went to Ilza again. By now, I had the idea that we should do something to more permanently remember the Jews who lived in the town. And I'd written letters ahead of my visit to the principal of the high school, who had helped organize the contest with the students. And he told me that they would organize a meeting. I think he said, the mayor will meet with you. Well, I got to Ilza. We went to the Dom Kulturi, House of Culture, which is the local, very active community center. And I came into a meeting, and there was a big long table set up with drinks and some little flowers and pastries. And there was the mayor and the head of the city council and the head of Dom Kulturi and a local historian and a few other people there to greet me. And I wasn't quite sure how to address them all. I had been expecting a very informal meeting. And I got up, and Chris interpreted for me. And the first thing I said is, my mother would never have believed that such a thing could happen. And I'm sure that she was looking over this and smiling about it. I spoke to them about my family's history in Ilza. I spoke to them about knowing that for so many years, the Jews and the Catholics in Ilza lived in relative peace with each other, that the Jews had made major contributions to the town. And I said that I think that Chris helped me frame it this way. I said we had a joint history that was lost to the previous century. and that we have the opportunity now to do something about finding that history. They responded immediately. They all started talking and chatting. And the next thing I know, the mayor, I let them talk for a while. People reminisced. They talked about having known Jewish neighbors. They talked about having heard stories. And then I said, well, let's do something about it. Let's form an organization or a committee. And the next thing I know, the mayor appointed the Sharik and myself. The Sharik was the high school principal, chairman of the committee, and the group gave it a name. They called it We Were Here Together. So that was 2015. I left Poland really intending to do a lot, and then sat on it for a few years. Unfortunately, life intervened and I wasn't able to do much to continue the project, although we had some pretty good ideas. In 2018, there's an annual Jewish genealogy workshop, a conference. And in 2018, for the first time, it was being held in Warsaw. And I went and I gave two talks. One of them was about a technical, about a database and how to use it. And the other was about this We Were Here Together project, which was at that point really just an idea rather than a reality. As I was planning the trip, I called my cousin Phyllis and said, hey, Phyllis, I know you want to go to Poland. How about coming with me? Well, within a week, Phyllis had 18 family members on a trip to Poland, including her older sister, Fran, a niece, cousin, 2 or 3, how many children of yours? 3. 3 children, several grandchildren. And I helped them organize the trip with Chris through Poland. And we all met in Ilza. We spent a couple of days together in Ilza. I had contacted the town again, my people, and we again had a wonderful reception. The local museum made a presentation for us about the history of the Jews. At Dom Kulturi, the mayor of the town set up a reception for us. We walked into they had in between my 2015 and 2018 trip, they had built a new $5 million building that was absolutely gorgeous. We walked into this huge glass and steel lobby, and there was a long, long table set up for us with drinks and paper flowers and pastries. And they had a reception for us. They treated us as if we were wonderfully honored guests, right? They were absolutely wonderful to us. We went to the cemetery, and as a group, we recited the El Ma'aleh Rashamim prayer, which we're able to do as a group, a small group, but we did that. I'm supposed to be showing photos. Okay. Let me go back just a little bit and show you. This is can you see that? Can you see a town view? This is the view of the town of Ilza from the Castle Hill. And by the way, the first time I was up at the Castle Hill in 2002 with Andrea and Susan, I grabbed a large handful of stones and took them back with me. I still have some of them. And when my mom died, I placed some in her coffin. So this is Ilza. These are the girls up at the castle. This is the mill on the, no, you're not seeing it?
Barbara, it's not coming through.
Okay, nothing is coming through? Oh.
The second picture is still up.
Okay, did that change?
No.
I don't know how to.
Barbara, it needs to be what's on your screen. What's the, the
Oh, okay, wait a
Yeah.
second. I think I know what to do.
up tab probably?
Yeah, just a minute. I'm sorry. So what picture do you see now?
Your mother's house.
Oh, okay. So has this changed now?
No,
It just changes something and then went back to the other one.
Is this
Yes.
anything new?
Yeah, but it didn't stay there. There were trees and then it went back to the storefronts.
Why would it do that? Does
And I
any,
don't know.
does
But
anybody even-
what's on your actual screen?
Okay, I have to make it come on my screen. Please move this window away from the shared application.
Maybe that's it.
No. Does anybody know anything about this?
But what are you doing to go to the other photo?
I have one window open
Mhm.
and it's a series of JPEGs and I'm trying to go from one to the next.
What are you doing to go from one to the next?
In other words, I'm clicking on one JPEG. Your screen sharing is paused.
Hmm.
Okay, but I'm going to try a new share and see if this does anything.
Yeah, it just looks like, oh, there you go.
Okay, so now what do I do for the next one? Okay, that's the mill by the river. Is that new?
I think you have to redo it
Yeah.
every time because you don't have them in a PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, but I did this before and I tested it, so I'm just a little confused about why. Do I have to go to new share each time?
I don't know.
All right, well, there were some pretty good things to show you. Okay, all right. So where was I? Sorry. And let me just try. I'm just trying to get my screen big again. Okay. How many are we now?
Oh.
Can anybody see?
16 participants, you mean?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So why is that? What am I doing wrong? Okay.
What did you do to put this one, the mill?
I'm sorry.
What did you do to make that let us see the mill?
I don't know. I thought I clicked on it.
Mhm.
And then I clicked on the next one,
Something.
but it didn't change.
Yeah, changed to another picture, but just very quickly went back.
I have to say new share each time. Is
I
that in
don't
the
know.
picture now?
No, it's like a texture.
gray bar.
Texture.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to forget about it. Okay.
Oh, too bad.
Okay, what I would like to do is to, well, okay. So I'm sorry. Okay, so I left in 2015. Whoa, it's almost time. I left in 2015. We went back for this trip. We were treated wonderfully. I wish that I can. This is a picture I really want to show. One of the things we did as we sat at the mayor's dinner in Ilza was, I think it was a Wednesday or a Thursday. We weren't sure how long we were going to stay. And we wanted to make Shabbat. I wanted to make Shabbat in Ilza. Can anybody see this picture? No. Okay, I'm going to try this again. Share screen and can you see that now?
Yeah, the table.
Yeah, okay. So we were sitting at the table and to make a very longer story short, if you could see the candlesticks on the table, those were my great-great-grandmother's candlesticks, originally from Warsaw. given to my grandmother. It was my great grandmother's candlesticks. Given to her daughter-in-law, my grandmother Bela Rivka in Ilza when she got married, brought by Bela Rivka to this country. My mother lit those candles for many years, and she left them to me. They're very, very heavy, and I schlepped them every place. And I would not put them in my luggage. I had to have them in over my shoulder. We decided to make Shabbat in Ilza. This is the a challah cover from a banquet, otherwise known as a banquet, that the Genealogy Society held up in Toronto, I believe in 2006. And they gave these out as favors, and I brought that with me. So the genealogists from, this was something else that was a link to the genealogists from Toronto. And they were my grandmother's candlesticks. And we found a catering hall, and they served chicken soup for us and cutlets, and we lit candles, and we sang songs, and we celebrated Shabbat. We had about 3 or 4 guests from Ilza with us, and the young man from the regional museum that's in Ilza said this is probably the first time that Shabbat had been celebrated since the war. I left, I went up to the conference, I gave my talk. 3 or 4 or 5 people from Ilza drove up and came to the to attend the meeting. And we met with them afterwards. We found a meeting room, and then we went out to lunch, and we talked about future plans. One of the ideas at some point I had created an online website called Kahila Links on Jewish Gen that told the story of Jewish Ilza. And I had somebody take my mother's memoirs many years ago, and a lot of her stories are of growing up in Ilza. It's one of the few records we have of Jewish life in Ilza. At the meeting, at the conference in Warsaw, somebody from the Cultural Center suggested that maybe as an art project, she can have some of her students illustrate my mother's stories. We have ideas for other things that could be done in Ilza. I would really like to find the gravestones from the cemetery, which everybody seems to think were used to pave a particular piece of road about 15 or 20 miles away. I'd like to find some permanent remembrance of the Jews in Ilza, and hopefully I will go back again and set something in motion to make some of these dreams come true. I think our time, I didn't realize that we're so close to the end. So I think I'm going to end it there. There are hopes here. My trips here have changed my sense of who I am. It's reunited me with my past. It's reunited me with a past that went very far back. And I hope to pass it on to my grandchildren. For those of you who have any hopes to do that, I hope that you can do the same and find some ways to connect with your families. And with that, okay, I go to, somebody tell me how to unmute everybody. I go to more. Lexi should be able to tell me. Oh no, I go to participants, I think.
I think we can all unmute, but maybe you can stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, do you
so-
see stop share?
Yep. Okay. And I'm
All
going
right.
to unmute.
Great.
And I guess you can individually just unmute.
We did it.
Is that going to work?
Yeah. So
Okay.
Barbara, where does that project with Ilza stand now?
In suspension. And sometime soon we will get it together. There's definitely cooperation. You know, on October 22nd is the anniversary of the very unfortunate deportation of the Jews of Ilza to Treblinka. And a couple of years ago, I sent an email to the Lukash, who works at the local museum, and I told him this was the day. And within 2 hours, he showed me a picture. He had taken some lanterns, placed them in the cemetery next to our monument, taken a photo and posted it on the museum's website. And he's done that on his own in subsequent years. I'm also told that the town is going to put its own plaque up at the cemetery gate in memory of the Jews of who lived there. So there's definite interest in, in cooperation from the town. And I just have to find enough people to work on it with me. I can't do it by myself, but it's on my to-do list.
So as somebody who's dabbled a little bit in genealogy, I think that people have no idea how painstaking it is to trace back from one generation to another. If you got to your fourth grandparents, great-grandparents, that's really quite an achievement.
Well, Polish records, we're very fortunate with Polish records. When Napoleon conquered Poland, one of the things he instituted was the Napoleonic Code, and a piece of it was the requirement to record births, marriages, and deaths. And it's all done in the same form. A Polish birth record reads, and it happened on the 24th day of November in the year 1883, that the laborer Shmuel Nuta Feldman came to the, presented himself to the witnesses, blah, 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 age 33, blah, 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 and he declared that on the 12th day of November, there was born a girl child to his wife, her name and her parents' names, and it's signed and it's witnessed. And these are the same forms that are used that you'll find in a French birth certificate. This was instituted in 1828.
But so many of those records were lost or destroyed. Did you say you actually found some records in the town of Ilza?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's
Aviva, there's
super incredible.
an amazing project called Jewish Records Indexing.
No, I know, but not everything is on there. So many places are just.
Oh, is it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but no, that is a great, I'm sorry, you tell, because other
Oh,
people. may
no,
not
it's
know.
a wonderful man named Stanley Diamond up in Montreal about 25 years ago needed to trace family members because there was a very rare disease and he needed to find distant relatives. And he now has a database with millions and millions of records online. They send people into the archives and copy them. They use the films, the microfilms that the Mormons did in the 1970s. And a lot of these records are online. And again, in these cases, because of the Jewish records indexing, I was able to identify records and then send away to the archives and get copies. And I think I have my third great-grandfather's death record, and he died in about 1879, and it lists his parents. So.
Can I just say something?
Who's that?
It's Carolyn.
Hi,
Sorry, I haven't put my picture up.
That's
So my great-grandfather and my maternal grandmother were born in Ilza, but my grandmother moved to the lovely town of Wierzbnik, which is right nearby. And that's where my parents and aunts and uncles were born. If you try to find the records for Wierzbnik, you don't find them on JRI because they were kept under Ilza. So if you look at, I don't know, Aviva, if you have actually looked on JRI for your town, if it's a Polish town, but the records may not be kept under that town. So you may think they don't exist, but they do in the neighboring town that was the main bureaucratic place.
Yeah,
So-
no, that's a very good point, and goes to Sheldon's comment about how painstaking the research is.
You know,
Aviva, I just sent you my email. There are a lot of behind the scenes projects going on, and I can help direct you to them if, at least in Poland. And please get in touch and I'll be glad.
Great, I will. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So Barbara, it's Sheila, and I was thinking about the committee and the project and the principal and all that. I wonder if, without making everybody crazy, since everybody's so busy, what about a very small scale project where the school there or the principal there adopts a school here, or it's some connection that's just one time a year, they do something, writing, finding journals, do something that's very, not a huge burden on you, but it's a great way to get, because the young people less than we do, they really don't know this history.
Yeah, again, on the list of things to do, when I met with the group in 2015 and with the mayor, and the chattering, and everybody was throwing out ideas, and they were suggesting a kind of something, a Facebook page, or some way to unite our grandkids who are of school age with their grandkids
Yes,
to do something.
Well, the young
Barbara-
people can pull that off better than,
But by the way, when the
Yeah.
kids, the year that the kids wrote poems, there was one young man, and I don't know where, he wrote a poem, and it starts with "Grandfather remembers," and grandfather reminisced about people he had known in the town, Jewish people. And one of the lines in the poems is, "Where are all the Purim songs?"
Mm.
And, like my heart stopped with that. You're like, where does this 17-year-old kid in Poland know, in the middle of nowhere in Poland, a town of 5,000, know from Purim songs?
Mm.
But evidently his grandfather told him they were Jews and the Jews sang Purim songs.
Barbara, well, two things. I'll try to make it quick. We have something in common. My mother's parents. My grandfather left my grandmother pregnant with my oldest aunt.
Oh, that's
And yeah, first went to England and worked there for something like a year to earn passage to the US, and then came over here and worked however much longer he needed to bring his wife and the baby over. By the way, along with his brother, who posed as her husband on the ship.
sure.
Steerage, yeah.
But everybody has a story of how
Well, I'm sorry, can I
how
just?
we ended up here, right? My Zeta of the Shalom, he was the oldest of 6. But when he was just a boy of maybe 4 or 5,
Wow.
and he had already a younger brother and sister, his father, who was by all accounts a Luftmensch, right, decided to go off to South Africa because gold had just been discovered there, and he was going to come back a millionaire. Right? To Rugova in Latvia, in Lithuania, right? And of course, with his mazel, right, months after he got there, the Boer War broke out.
Oh,
Couldn't come back. He couldn't get out. But he came
Wow.
back finally, at which point my Zeta was already the man of the house, right? And he had sort of taken over.
how much later?
Pardon?
How much
He was,
later?
he was about 12 at that point.
No, how much later? How many years after? Did
When did he come back?
yeah, before he was able to come
Oh,
back.
he left. My Zeta was born in 1889.
Mhm.
Right? And his father,
I mean, how long was he in South Africa?
well, how long was it? About 4 or 5
Yeah.
years.
Uh-huh.
But
Okay.
it took him a while to get back. Right? And by then, my Bubba, my great grandmother, whom I knew, right, had sort of managed. She sold herrings out of a barrel, and my Zeta went to work. And in walks this guy, and as my mother used to say, the only thing he knew how to do was to make babies, right? Because they had 3 more kids. And my Zeta left at the age of 14 because he was fighting so much with his father, and made his way to this country by himself at 14. And I think about the 14-year-olds I know.
I think
Who can't find their way across the street, for
I
God's
think
sake.
every one of us has an amazing
Mhm.
story. And my friend
Listen, yeah.
Robbie's mother told in her book, I love this story. I forget which relative it was, a great grandfather. Her great grandmother died. She was a widow. She had a few children.
Oh.
She found a man who would marry her and take the children. He said, okay, I'll take the children. I'll take you, but I'm not, he says, I'll take you, I'll marry you, but I'm not taking all the kids. And they packed up and were ready to move from one town to another. And one of the little boys, who was probably your great-grandfather or something like that, had his
My
little peccolo.
grandfather,
Oh,
my
okay.
grandfather.
He had his peccolo, and they had a card,
Peckle?
and he threw it up on the card, and they threw it back. And that happened a few times until he got the idea he wasn't going.
Oh,
This is
what's
such
a peckle? What's his dog?
a peccolo, a little package.
Little back.
Okay. Yeah, and listen, I said I had two things.
I think I might have made up that word.
Okay. I said I had two things.
A peckle is a little package.
Okay.
It is.
I had- Okay, the second thing is that my mother's side of the family had as we've been having Zoom meetings every the ganze mentor mishpucha family reunion once a month, and it was yesterday, and we talked about some of this stuff.
It's wonderful. Yeah. Does anybody, Aviva, where does your family come from, as far as you know?
They're mostly, the ones I work on the most are from Dębic or Dębica in Poland. Near Krakow.
Okay. Please get in touch. Sure.
I will.
we
I
will
will.
have
Thank
to-
you. This was so lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you,
Okay.
Barbara.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I will say goodbye, and Phil, maybe you can work with me on getting some stuff going, and we'll go.
Right, actually,
Yeah, and,
you know, when somebody mentioned about a school, it was interesting because after we had gone in 2006,
Mhm.
and the high school was very involved, and I was very involved. My kids went to the Schechter High School here on Long Island, and I figured, and I wrote a whole proposal for them to get in touch with them and to, you know, all the types of projects they could do together. And I figured this is a slam dunk, you know, how are they going to, they were totally uninterested in it with the Jewish school, not the, you know,
Yeah,
so, you know, you never know where people's heads are at.
you have to find the right time and the right people, and they don't
Right.
always coincide, and enough time.
Right.
All right.
Barbara, what you said you're going to send names of there's an organization. Was it the Jewish Records or something else?
Well, if you come to some of the classes, or just remind me that there'll be
Oh
some,
yeah, yeah, I'd
there'll be
like to.
some handouts.
Okay,
And
yeah, if there's room still, I'd be glad to. Yeah,
sure.
thank you,
Okay.
and for all of
Thank you,
this.
Barbara. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
everybody.
Barbara.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.